This podcast is brought to you by India Knowledge at Wharton. Please visit knowledge.wharton.upenn.edu/India for more information.
India Imagine was the theme of the 2008 Wharton India Economic Forum that was held in Philadelphia recently. The day-long event attracted several leaders including APJ Abdul Kalam, former president of India, as well as CEOs of Indian companies, nonprofit groups, consulting, and private equity firms. India Knowledge at Wharton brings you one-on-one conversations with these leaders.
We're speaking today with Ravi Kuchimanchi, who is the founder of the Association for India's Development, otherwise known as AID. Ravi, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Can you tell us about the genesis of AID and how it's grown over the years since you founded it in 1991?
I was a graduate student at University of Maryland in 91, and I basically thought that it'll be good to have some kind of channels where the Indian community in the US could relate to the real India, rather than only relating to the Bollywood India or to the markets in India, but also to the rural India where about 70 or 60 to 70% of India lives. And so that was the idea with which, I sent out an email that led to the starting of this group, Association for India's Development. Essentially, it channelizes the energy and interests of the non-resident Indian community, both students and professionals, and seeks them to learn as well as participate in issues that connect with rural India. They help out both by raising funds as well as by giving knowledge inputs and by volunteering when both their time in the US as well as in India.
Right. And so you started out as one organization, now have 50 chapters around the world?
Yeah. So the organization started at College Park, but after 3 years of it sustaining in the University of Maryland, it started spreading to other university campuses, like in Pittsburgh and Princeton and so on. And over time, we had about 40 chapters in the US, and it also small chapters also sprouted in Australia, in UK, and so that's how it grew. And the other thing was that it moved from a student organization to include also professionals and the general NRI community. So right now our mix is about 40% students in our chapters and about 60% are working, people.
Right. Now, ironically, it was a Bollywood film called Swadesh Right? Correct. That told your story. And in fact, it was based on a project in which you provided electricity to the tribal village of Bilgaon. What do you attribute the success of that project that the film was based on?
So the context of that project is that it's situated in the Narmada Valley. And the Narmada Valley is very famous for this struggle against this large dam, the Sardar Sarovar Dam, which is displacing about 2 lakh people just by its reservoir alone, which the World Bank had begun by funding it. The World Bank now has recognized the problems with the project and has agreed that the project is faulty and it has withdrawn, but it is continuing with the efforts of the Indian government. Now, so it is in that context that we thought it was a very good idea to set up an example of an alternate energy where the electricity is generated based on village resources and can light up that village. So in the case of these large dams, what happens is the energy of the water is trapped and then it's fed to larger cities in India. And those villages which are being displaced themselves do not get any electricity from that project. So they do not develop locally. And that is one contrast, we also wanted to show. So this was a project, we collaborated with a group called People's School of Energy, which kind of provided the technical help to the project, and the Narmada Bachao Andolan, which is the people's movement, which was raising the struggle, and our group. And so the achievement of the project was that it was done entirely by Shramdan, which is essentially the volunteer labor from the people. And it tapped the energy of a waterfall. So there's about a 9 or 10 meter waterfall in that village. It's a beautiful waterfall. So we diverted part of that water and that dropped these 10 meters and then turned a turbine which produced electricity.
So do you find that each of these projects require sort of a unique and innovative solution? There's certainly lots of villages that aren't next to waterfalls, so you probably had to find other methods for generating energy.
That's true. See, so this is very applicable in tribal areas or in hilly areas, actually. It doesn't have to be a waterfall, but if there is a source of water, the hill naturally provides a contour for the water for it to drop. So you can make it drop in a pipe even by taking it some distance and then making it drop where the hill is steeper. So you don't really need a waterfall, but you need a source of water and you need ups and downs so that the water can be made to fall. And that is there in many hills. And so it has the micro hydro projects of this kind have a wide-ranging applicability, and the Indian government is also investing money through its through its renewable energy ministry to look at some of these ideas. So the other kind of things that we are doing in this sector right now is this hay box, that I wanted to show you. So this is also something which, you can just see this box. Now, this is a bamboo box. It's entirely made in a village by a local artisan who gets paid about $1, for making this whole thing. And then it is stuffed with straw. Now, straw or hay is a good insulator of heat, and this entirely lined both the cap and inside. So if you put anything hot inside this box, it remains hot for 8 hours. So it's like a hot box, for rural, for villages in India. The other thing that it does is that it helps in cooking things like rice, potatoes, and pulses and so on. You boil the thing, and instead of continuing to cook on the fire, you put the boiling rice inside this and close it. Because the hay retains the heat, in that heat, the rice continues to cook, and it finishes cooking here. So you save about 60% of the fuel by using this, and so you save on greenhouse gases. And for a village person, it saves the fuel, like the cost of fuel or the cost it takes for a village woman to collect firewood. A typical village woman in India spends about 2 hours every day or every 2 days collecting the firewood for her family to burn. And this saves time on that. And it saves cooking time as well. So this is one thing that we are promoting.
Right. It makes perfect sense that it would work, and it seems so simple. But tell us a little bit about how you came up with this thought that this would work.
Yeah, see, one of the things that I'm excited about this is that it's made in a village and sold in a village, because we sell it at 70 rupees, which a village person can afford. Mm-hmm. There are very few technologies. Now, a village can make things for the global market. That's one of the current things that, countries like China, for example, we're good at doing that. Right. But this is made and sold in villages, so I like that. I came across this idea on the internet. Basically, I was looking for an efficient device to retain heat. Like hay, I knew was a good insulator. So I was looking for option for solar heating systems. So through solar through reflectors, you can heat water up. But then to keep the water hot, you have to put it in some insulating vessel, which can be lined with hay. It's a very low-cost insulator. So I was doing a search on that for the internet on the internet and came across this idea of hay box. And apparently, the United Kingdom used hay boxes during World War as a way to reduce fuel consumption in the country. So they had used it during World War, so it's a known technology. What I realized was that it has a very good application in Indian villages. So immediately we tried to make it locally, and then we started giving it, actually selling it to village people. And one of the fascinating things that this does to them is that it also keeps food hot for 8 hours. It not only helps in cooking, but you keep something hot, the rice stays hot for 8 hours in this. They don't have microwave ovens, right. To heat up things. And this is something that they're very excited about because they can get hot food any time of the day,
Very simple but effective.
Very effective, yeah.
Yeah. Fascinating. Do you see, obviously your organization has grown over time through the participation of non-resident Indians. Do you see that trend continuing, and what do you think is driving it?
Yeah, so in the U.S., I think it's a passion. People are actually interested, both Indians and Americans. They also, like for example, we have potential Fulbright scholar who is from the U.S., Jera, who is probably going to be visiting and working with us in India for about 8 months. So what drives these young people, whether they are Americans or Indians, is kind of a passion to change, and to make the world a better place for everybody. Somehow there seems to be so much inequity in the world today that there's a large fraction of the world that basic resources are not reaching them. And there's a lot of exploitation in the world. A lot of these people have remained poor because their rights have been trampled historically as well as continue to be even today. Trampled. And somehow, the youth of today wants to, play a role in changing that.
And so you see it as a generational thing specifically?
Both as a generational thing, and maybe also because of the internet, that has also really helped aid. It has given an easier way for us to communicate and reach out to each other. It's a cost-effective way, right? Like previously, like today, leadership can come from anywhere in a decentralized manner through the internet. It can get, you can make your thoughts heard. Right. So I think there's also a part of that, right. That's helping.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the new initiatives that you're focusing on as well. You are keeping an eye on, I think, the Right to Information Act and the National Rural Employment Guarantee Acts that were passed in the country. Why are you stepping up your interest in those areas?
Because they fundamentally, RTI Act has fundamentally got to do with democracy. And like the Freedom of Information Act, in the US. Now, there's a lot of corruption in India, and the government's accountability to the people is something that we need to work on. As I was talking today at the conference, the feedback, from the people to the government or to the industry, even from the poor people, is something which is neglected. Mm-hmm. And without a feedback cycle, the example I was giving was, like, for example, the difference between simple and compound interest. In compound interest, the interest is fed back into the capital and generates more capital. Mm-hmm. And so with time, a simple interest is a linear growth. It grows very slowly, the fund in a simple interest account. Yeah. But in a compound interest account, with time, it grows exponentially. It grows very fast. Mm-hmm. And so it's very important for voices of the people to be heard by the government. And people cannot give the voices if they do not know what the government is doing. And Right to Information Act essentially allows people to question, to ask government questions, and which they have to answer in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. So, and it also helps fight corruption through this feedback, Right. So that's why we are interested. And there are examples where if people have not gotten passports or ration cards, today they can file an RTI application and ask what is the status of their application, what is the status of other people who have applied on the same way, what is the name of the government officer who is supposed to clear that but hasn't done so far. Right. And instead of asking all these questions, oftentimes your work gets done. They say, here's your ration card, or here is your passport.
Right. So do you see your organization moving more in the direction of influencing policy in the future? As opposed to, it seems like...
Definitely. I think it has moved both in the past, and it's also continuing to move in that trajectory. Both influencing policy as well as implementation of good laws. Like the NREGA is an example, the Employment Guarantee Act, because our government is spending about $5 billion every year of taxpayer money in providing 100 days employment, guaranteeing 100 days employment to every rural family in India. Mm-hmm. And so, of course, this is not a dole. The family actually works and is paid a minimum wage. But they find the work, and they have to give this work to the people. Now, what we find is that there are some areas in India, some states and some districts, where 70% of this money is not reaching the end user, the intended person who works, but is being siphoned off. There are some states and some regions where it's actually working very well. So, and this is something which came in 2005. So it's only 2 years, 6 and 7 other 2 years it's been implemented so far. And what our organization is very keenly interested in doing is this new legislature that comes in India to also ensure its effective implementation, to give feedback to the government, to kind of take it to the administrative officials locally as well as to the state representatives, the corruption or the faults we find in the implementation of NREG Act or the RTI Act, and then go to courts if necessary, and ensure that an accountable process of implementing this progressive legislature happens, so that we actually not only end up with good laws but also good implementation of those laws, where India lags the US quite a bit, I feel. In the US, I think it does a much better job of implementing its laws. But in India, though laws are very progressive, the implementation is lacking.
And what do you see as sort of the largest hurdles on the horizon for organizations like yours? Or some of the biggest challenges?
I think one of the biggest challenges is, a lot of solutions or a lot of work seems to be custom made. There's no one effective thing that addresses in a diverse country like India. There is no one magic wand that you can wave to solve these things. So it requires people who kind of are committed, who spend time. There is a learning curve for new people who get involved in these kind of things, either as chosen fields of their pursuit or as volunteers. There is a learning curve that they have to go through to be effective, and it requires staying power. They have to stick, and I think that has been one of not only of our organizations, but for the tapping human potential, making it stick. To all these problems, to understand their complexities, and then people find what they can do about them.
Right. Well, Ravi, thanks very much for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
For more information, please visit knowledge.wharton.upenn.edu/India.